Hello, it's Miss Darling in the studio, and I thought today we would have some fun making some circular ephemera. Some people call them, junk journal coins. Mine aren't going to look like coins by any stretch of the imagination, but they will be round, and I have an idea for what I want to do. Now, these particular rounds were cutouts from the pockets that I've been making, and so for instance, I would punch out a circle here in this particular pocket and then just set it aside, and here's where I punched out another one, and it's generally from text paper, but I do have some that for instance, this was the basic text paper, but then I do have a couple here from a different project that I cut out of some textural paper that I had colorized with oxide inks. So I'm going to see what I can do with all of them. Now, what I did first was, since this paper is quite thin, I have cut out two circular rounds from cardstock and glued them together. And I'm now going to glue the decorated or the textural paper on top of the cardstock, and that will give them more substance and help protect them from getting torn or damaged. And so I'm just going to pop this down on that, line it up as best I can, and here we have a decorated coin, for lack of a better terminology for it. And so now I'm going to move on and see what I can accomplish with these others. I hope you're all doing well today. Please leave me a comment and like the video before you leave, so that that helps the algorithm send it on to other people to be able to see, and I would appreciate that. If you have any questions, suggestions for other topics you would like me to cover, I would appreciate if you would mention it in the comments section. So those are done. You don't have to do this with textural paper. It can be any paper, and any size, whatever punch you happen to have. These are 2.5 inches in diameter, and here's what my punch looks like. I do enjoy making this type of thing, so I'm thinking I maybe will look around for some other types of punches, maybe a square or rectangular one that's a little bigger. I do have a square or rectangle punch already, but it's quite small, and to have any kind of real impact, you need to have something more sizable. Alright, I have these all punched down. Now, recently I uploaded a video on making clusters, and that was a great deal of fun. Oh, before I go further, I want to just give these some inking around the edges. helps give it that finished look, but also a, you know, kind of a two-tone. One can always take ink of whatever color you choose and, you know, add a border of any color that you need if you want to highlight something. Everything doesn't have to be inked with brown ink. It's just that the brown color promotes a you know, an aged look. Makes it look more vintage. That's why we use it so much. Now, what I started to talk about was a recent video I made on how to make clusters, and lots of them at one time, and it was so much fun. And so I've decided to look through my clusters first off to see if I can use some of them on these round shapes. And I just want to show you, I'm working on a journal that's going to feature birds, and I've been making all kinds of pockets in anticipation of using them in that journal. And so I'm just going to show you some of those real quick here. This one was the first one I started in which I had included these rather funny looking birds. And so I went on, and here's another one I made. Again, one of these rounds was taken from this section here, and that's how it looks on the reverse side. I have, these were, never mind, these were cards from the deck of cards, and I had decorated them with birds, and that will go in to the journal. Now here's an envelope that I made for that journal, and I used a cluster right here, and I thought, oh, that just, you know, they're so easy to use, and you just look for one that's the color you need and the shape. And here's another cluster right here, and it's the perfect, quickest way to add a bit of extra to, you know, what you're working with. Here's another cluster there. And so you see, I've really made good, here's another cluster here. I've made wonderful use of those clusters. Now here's a round that I cut out of a different kind of paper that I was using on one of the other pockets, and I had glued a butterfly on top. But the clusters have just been really terrific. Here's one here. You can see they're very different. So if you want to learn how to make clusters and be successful at it, I invite you to watch my video on how I made those. And I don't see another pocket with clusters on, but I have successfully used them to finish off these pockets in a really rather beautiful and unique way, and it was just so quick and easy. So I just wanted to show you these to show you how fabulous clusters are, and if you haven't made any, you should be making them. I'm disappointed in myself that I didn't get around to making any myself until recently. Anyway, so this one is done, and that's a cluster that I glued on top, which is where I got the idea to use my clusters on these if I have something that's the right color and shape. Now I have several here that are in the brown tones, and I think those would go very nicely color-wise. They look great, and I don't mind at all that the clusters are taller than the circle. Maybe I'll do something like that. And that's a great way to use those up. Now that's the last of the brown ones that I have, but let me look here through my little bin and see what else I might have. I'm going to let color be my guide, and I want to turn these upside, you know, right side up, so when I put something down I don't accidentally glue it on upside down. So there's, I like that. Maybe move that off there. Oh, what do you know? Here's an extra one. What might that look like? Ooh. I like that. I think I'll go color on color and neutral on neutral. Now, these could be glued. The rest of these are maybe not color appropriate, so I won't consider them. So now the decision would be, do you put it in the middle? Do you offset it? And then maybe do something over here. This one is going to be too big to offset, so I would glue that right down, smack down the middle. When, you know, I like the idea of, if I'm going to offset it, I would do it sort of like this. You could, you know, there's many different ways you can do this. I think I like it best right about there. So what I'm going to do is put my glue on the circle and wind it out. And then these could either be tucks to put into a journal or to be glued down onto a page. You know, they could even be a focal point for a cover. You know, it just depends on what you're making and what your needs are and the color palette that you're working with. Yeah, I like that a lot. So I'm going to, you know, maybe I think this one I like centered up the best. So I'm going to do that. Placement is very important. You can have the most lovely item in the world. This goes for your home as well. And if you don't place it properly, I don't care how beautiful it is, it's just not going to work in your favor. I think we're going to offset this one just a bit. There are lots of design concepts, or I should say design principles, that come into play when you're talking about placement. And it's really important to know them, because it can make a world of difference in your work, in what you're creating. You know, have you ever made something or decorated some area of your home or apartment, and when you got it done, you just really didn't like it, but you didn't know why? Well, the reason is because you've not known a design principle or two that has been broken or not utilized, and that's why you don't like it. So, you know, it's important to find out, you know, to learn good design principles, and they're the same principles for two-dimensional art as they are for, you know, three-dimensional home design. Now this one I'm going to go to the opposite side. And, okay, how do we do with this one? I think we'll center this one up. There we go. Clusters. What a great way to decorate ephemera, get something unusual and different looking, and maybe even something you hadn't even planned in advance. It just comes together and happens. So I encourage you to make tons of clusters. Great way to use up, you know, your scraps and things, that whether it be paper or fabric, doesn't matter. It's a great way to use it up and create some really interesting effects that have a lot of texture and interest and color and shape and design, and play around with them and see how different. I mean, here's a bunch of just clusters, and you know, they're sitting here waiting for me to use them in some way. All by themselves, they don't really mean too much. But when you use them to finish something off and design it well, they're just fantastic. So I do encourage you. And if you have found this helpful and inspirational, I sure hope you'll let me know. I would appreciate hearing from you. As many of you, I do read everything, and I do thank you so much for being here and watching, and hopefully participating, and I hope you'll stick around. And that said, this is Miss Darling calling this a wrap. Bye-bye.